The Cass try was great to watch, but you know what they were doing at that time. They had a try ruled out for obstruction, which was obstruction, but still marginal in it. They had the try where Hitchcock's heel just touched the line before the ball just came out of his hands, marginal again. So I don't think they were as terrible as we kind of think they were. They just made a shit ton of mistakes. And what emphasised, which isn't good, what emphasised the problem for me is every single time Cass's defence forced a mistake, pretty much within 3 plays they'd made a mistake, and almost always it was the player who'd forced the mistake, because it was Moores, it was Milner, it was Millington, it was these players that you don't expect the errors to come from necessarily, making the mistakes after forcing the mistakes. So that all their good work was being undone, and you could just see that eating away at them to the point where Ben Roberts threw that stupid pass that hit the floor. Well, not stupid, it was just terrible. It was absolute terrible execution on a pass that normally they hit every time. Meakin hits the hole, Webster's on his shoulder, and then they score a try. But the passes were just... There was an element of doubt for everything they were doing in that second half because of the errors, and it just didn't click.
It felt to me like... absolutely. It felt to me like Leeds... Whilst they did enough in attack, I don't ever think like Castleford were overwhelmed though. Castleford, on a different day, it was all to do with Castleford's attacking execution for me, because on a different day, when they execute properly, they probably win that game 48-24. Do you know what I mean? They didn't defend badly against Leeds, I didn't feel, at any point really during the game. It was with ball in hand that they were really letting themselves down, and I feel like all the weight of expectation and all the weight of pressure was firmly, despite what people in the media and despite what people at the club will have said, was firmly on Castleford Tigers, because they've been so dominant throughout the year, because they've had this run of victories against Leeds Rhinos, and because everybody expected them to go out at Old Trafford and play that Cass way and reproduce that. That pressure must have been overwhelming, and combined with the way that Leeds were playing and the errors that they were forcing, I feel like as the game went on, Cass were forced to snatch opportunities more, force that past that 5 or 6% more, and just try too hard almost to get that flowing style going, because they weren't at any point, it seems to me, resorting to a plan B and trying to match Leeds' style of play, because Leeds were in control and Leeds were winning the battle, and Leeds were kicking off the island very, very early in this game. They were defending that lead at 6 and 7-0 mark, so they knew how to get through this game and go on and win that. So all the pressure went back to Castleford, and it was Leeds saying, come on then, come and break us down on this bigger, more spread out playing surface, and Cass were unable to do it. I think predominantly through the weight of the pressure they were putting themselves under to go out and perform. The
one real occasion where I thought, right, this might turn things for Cass, and I think it was only at 7-0 when Danny Maguire kicked it out on the full, and Junior Moores dropped it, and it was just like that, like you say.
Early in the second half, that Danny Maguire kick out was probably the worst play of the game, that out on the full, really, wasn't it? In a game where there was a lot of things to choose from.
Well, they had a few other bad plays,
but they pissed it up a wall every time. They were handed an opportunity, Cass fucked it up.
But every bad kick Leeds put in, they got something out of it still through either a little bit of luck, a lot of endeavour, but also putting the ball in the position to play it to the conditions, rather than putting the ball in a position to be chasing in those conditions, which is what's an interesting thing for me is every single one of the starting pack for Leeds made over 90 metres carrying the ball.
Right.
None of the starting pack for Cass did the same. Yeah. So that just shows, and then by the time your impact guys are coming on, you're behind, narrowly behind, albeit, but you're behind in conditions where you can't chase, and you're not playing very well either because you've got an important link piece missing. It was just the whole recipe, like everyone sort of said, went towards Leeds the way this game played out and the way they played this game, and I just think Cass didn't think that they needed to change.
Well, they were absolutely isolating Luke Gale, and Luke Gale was left kicking into not the abyss, but Luke Gale's kicking game was not given the time or the space it needed to flourish because of how isolated he was by Leeds' style of play and the way they approached that game. How far into it was into the 60th minute of the game before one of his kicks at the end of a set, even found the ground when he was returning to it. The performance of young Jack Walker
didn't drop the ball, did he?
He was utterly flawless, and for a kid of 18, that augurs really well in that environment, and that shows you someone handling pressure versus someone not handling pressure.
It also tells you when you've got a forward pack winning collisions,
precisely,
and being up in the face of the opponent's players, you get space to take your kicks. When it's not going that way, your kicks find the man, and all of those, like you say.
That's it, and it made it easier for Leeds to make quick and easy meters returning those balls because they were under no pressure returning kicks, and that gave them another leg up and another psychological advantage.
Anything else outside of Danny Maguire in terms of individuals who?
Well, I've touched on Jack Walker, who I thought was phenomenal, and I'm a big wrap round that kid. I thought he was very, very good indeed. We've alluded to the performance of Carl Ablett, who in his second stint on the field was monstrous for Leeds, and I think that will have had some impact. And Brett Ferris, similarly, off the interchange, was important for them too. The use of the interchange by Leeds really carried them home, I felt, in this one too.
I have to say Singleton and Garbutt were...
That hit that Singleton put on, was that in the first half, do you remember? I think it was on Millington, or he got out of the line and put a big hit on someone, and it set the crowd going. That was individual pieces of play like that, combined with their strong forwards performances. I don't want to single out people negative in a negative sense, but I felt like, and I think everyone agrees with me, Greg Eden did not have his best game in a Cast Tigers shirt.
I thought he was fine in the first half, apart from there was the knock on that was forced when he made the break after on a free play.
Yeah.
Kind of understandable because he was pushing it a bit because he had a free play, but it did really switch the momentum back to Leeds when Cass had really jumped up the field. And there was obviously the try that he should have scored. They'd worked the space, they'd found a gap, and they ran at the right man. But that right man wasn't for being the man. He's been in defence so often, and he covered for the man outside him, who often leaves him stranded, and he punched the ball free as well, which was what he was going for. But there's always an element of coming an element on the ball carrier. But Greg Eden could have done better there, like you say. But other than those two bits, I don't think in the first half he looked out of place, out of depth. It was more like when the ball started raining down on him in the second half. He just couldn't cope.
I mean, there was no one in that Cast side that covered themselves in any real glory, was there?
I think that probably McMeekin and Webster were okay, just didn't get enough opportunity, and Hitchcock's, I think, didn't do anything bad. I feel sorry for him, but he also shouldn't have been out there because it should have been worked out differently. And that's about it. I think people are giving Gale a lot of stick. I think Roberts was worse than Gale. Yeah,
but I think Gale's more in the spotlight, isn't he? Roberts did make some pretty glaring errors, but Luke Gale throughout the piece was kind of, because he's been the general for them and because he's marshalled them around all season and they've been so dominant, and then in this one particular game he struggled, and it was obvious that he was struggling because so many kicks were getting returned. He wasn't finding the spaces that he was used to. He wasn't getting the opportunity all the time to distribute the ball the way he has been doing. It kind of brought it into sharper focus, didn't it? But I do take your point on Roberts as well. Stats, what did they tell us about this one?
Well, Leeds had some important stats end in their favour. 232 more metres, 5-4 in clean breaks, only one different there. A big 3.2% better team tackle success. The most important, though, was probably the 13-20 error count. When you throw in that Leeds actually were behind on the offload count, 11-13, and had 9 more attacking kicks and 30 more carries, it shows Leeds played the conditions. They did lose the penalty count 5-1, but even that suggests they were playing the conditions too, of it being a bit easier to defend repeat sets in the wet. And if you look at every single penalty they gave away was in their own half. 4 of the 5 were within 15 metres of the sticks.
Really?
So there you go.
Individually, who stood out for us then?
Well, we start with Danny Maguire. 2 tries, 1 try assist, fully deserved the man of the match award. In fact, I called it when he knocked the ball out, didn't I?
You were calling it very early days. Well, I think I called it last week, Mark. But we'll get to that.
After setting up a try and knocking a ball out to save a try, and I just felt we did think then it was his to lose. Winning Callum Watkins 133 metres, Ryan Hall 140 metres, Mitch Garbutt 128 metres, Stevie Ward 40 tackles.
Massive for a man who wasn't meant to be playing.
Yeah, now he's out of the England squad, which we'll get to. But apparently he was named in the England squad but he was advised by the doctor that you can't go and play more games on that shoulder. Get it rested up properly, which is sensible. For Castleford, Greg Eden made 139 metres, Greg Minikin 120. Paul McShane had a try assist, 54 tackles and 12 marker tackles, so worked really hard, maybe too hard. Meakin 42 tackles, 10 marker tackles. Junior Moore's 115 metres. They're the positive numbers for those guys.
There you go. Okay, there was another grand final being played that morning though. Bradford Bulls' ladies team won the Super League for their competition with a 36 points to 6 win over Fev Rovers ladies, so congratulations to the Bulls. Predictions, Mark?
Well, you called it. So you made your win by 4 points. You had 152 on the season to my 148.
There you go. So very, very little in it over a 227 game
in the
comp.
In the Super Brew, Bob Phillips finished the winner of this year's competition. So well done to Dr. Bob.
There you go.
There is a Super Brew running for the World Cup if people involved in the Super Brew competition for Super League should probably check their inboxes or something, their spam boxes or whatever.
Yeah.
Or go onto the website, the Super Brew website, and you'll have like a little invite somewhere to join the World Cup League.
Okay. Right, well that's the grand final covered. Let's take a look now at the England World Cup squad news. Okay, so we're looking forward to the World Cup now, and the England squad was announced this week, Mark. We'll go through the squad in full, and then we've got plenty of feedback, and we'll obviously, I'm sure, be able to give our thoughts and opinions on it. Well, that squad in full, though: John Bateman, Kevin Brown, Sam Burgess, Thomas Burgess, Ben Curry, Luke Gale, James Graham, Ryan Hall, Chris Hyington, Chris Hill, Josh Hodgson, Johnny Lomax, Jermaine McGilvray, Mike McMeekin, Sean O'Loughlin, Mark Percival, Stephen Ratchford, James Roby, Scott Taylor, Alex Walmsley, Callum Watkins, Elliot Whitehead, Gareth Widdop and George Williams.
Okay, so Rich Wilkinson, we started with, he said, Hyington in front of Ward and Farrell, crazy world. Brown and Curry, not for me. A big ask from Curry, so we've covered the Stevie Ward situation.
Yes. David Powell, St. David 2911, said, I like the squad. I would have added Farrell and Tompkins instead of Hyington and Brown.
Fat Boy Rob said, it's almost like he's picked the squad to win a bet with his Aussie mates. Where's Tompkins or Shaw? Only 2 wingers, 4 halfbacks. One small defence of the Brown inclusion, he did play very well in the friendly. I remember commenting that he outplayed Gale that day.
There you go. Darren Garner said, starting at the whacking obvious, Zach is not in. The question is, was he ever? I'm not sure he would have, but I rate Zach ahead of Lomax skill-wise, although I think Lomax fits this team better personality-wise, so I'm happy with that. What we do know, however, is that Sam Tompkins is not on the radar with Wayne Bennett. Injury, perhaps? I don't know. Maybe you do, Mark. The next point everyone has flagged is Kevin Brown. I'm not sure I would have put him in, but as I've tried to state on my tweets, it's more than picking the informed players. This begs the question, is Kev there to be more of a wise old man and show leadership to Gale and Williams? I know that after the weekend my halfbacks would be Gareth Widdop, given for my money, and Williams. It's because Gale froze on the big stage at the weekend, so would he do the same in an England shirt? Back to Kev, is he there because, in the same way if Sean O'Loughlin was to have no arms or legs, I would still include him in the squad, as by having him on the trip and in and around the players, he would give them just as much as being on the paddock for the lads. Who knows? But I hope we don't see Kev on the pitch, as that would mean 2 of the other halves would be injured. Ratchford, well, he is, in my opinion, the best value possible as a utility back. He could slot in anywhere and do a good job. He wouldn't, however, be in my 13. The other debate I can see brewing is in the halves. I've told you my selection, but who is yours? Let's start the debate. Please, please, please don't entertain listeners slagging off the team. There is a reason why the lads have been selected, unbeknown to us. So let us get behind them and keep everything crossed they do us proud.
Do you want me to answer his questions?
Let's go for it, yeah.
Because one was directed at me. I don't think Sam Tompkins is particularly injured, but I don't think he's particularly fit either yet. Given all the injuries he's had over the last 24 months. But I just, obviously, Wayne Bennett isn't a fan. That's pretty apparent. Otherwise, it makes no sense, but we'll talk more maybe later on with that. But I do think Zach was in the side.
Yeah, I do.
I don't think that's in question, personally. But there you go. In terms of halfbacks, it's
It's
Widdop and Gale for me still.
Really?
Yeah.
I go with it Williams.
Fair enough.
Personally.
I